And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her feet, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her, and pulled her unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf, plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. Amen. And when we read this, we all know the story of Noah, and there's been many messages and little storybooks and children's stories, and there's all kinds of things that's been done with it. What I wanted to do is when I read the story, I think of the story of Noah's Ark, and it's the story of promise, second chances, grace, love of the Father. There's many stories, but what I want us to get to today is I want you to think of which of this is your story? What does this have to do? And when I read this, I tried to break it down onto how this could go into the new year. And I noticed that it said Noah sent a raven the first time, which flew to and fro, back and forth. But what really interested me in this is a raven is a bird of prey. It's a meat eater. So why did he send a meat eater first? Excuse me, my buzzing here. But so I got to thinking about it. I thought, well, why did he? So I looked up some things, and the theologians, they all have different ideas of why he sent a meat eater. But I think it is that he sent them to make sure everything was gone, that everything was destroyed from the earth. So when it was time for them to leave, that everything was gone. So then I thought about it, I looked up raven. It's kind of funny because raven has many myths about ravens. I mean, there's everything from the Indians have myths about shift changing and all kinds of things. So I'm going to read a couple that I thought was pretty good. But it's in, like I say, the raven is used in many myths, wise tales, Jewish writings. It said that St. Vincent, which was martyred, he was executed. And it said the ravens protected his body from being devoured by wild animals. And it also said that a raven had saved St. Benedict by taking away a loaf of bread that he had blessed. And come to find out that it had been poisoned by jealous monks. And it's also said that in the Quran it's mentioned also that Cain was taught how to bury Abel from a raven. So that's a pretty strange one. But we see that a raven is also a sign of death. You see people say that when they gather, they're a sign of death. But one interesting thing that I learned about a raven is that if one of them dies, the rest of them will take a moment of silence. And it's pretty neat. They'll just wait a minute and then they'll fly off. So it was kind of wild. But so I got to thinking, what is it about a raven? Why did God use a raven? But if you look throughout the Bible, He's used a raven many times. God used a raven to feed Elijah. We see in 1 Kings 17:4-6. In verse 6 it said, "And the ravens brought him bread, flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank from the brook." So really, what is God saying? It's kind of wild. It really interested me in this. Is why did He send a raven out first, to and fro, just never to rest, just fly back and forth, back and forth. And it made me think about, this thing's driving me crazy. Forgive me, but it's driving me nuts. But what really got me thinking about it is they were secured in the ark, and the storm came, and all the animals and everything. So He sent it out to, like I said, I really believe it's just to make sure that everything was there, was gone. And so we see also in this that He sent a dove, which is also interesting because a dove is planting. It only eats off vegetation. And that's a symbol of care, devotion. It makes its own milk for its babies, which is a sign of mother, So it really kind of was interesting also. But when I looked at this, forgive me for checking my notes, but I'm trying to make sure I get this right because it's really interesting to me. If you see, the first time she flew back and forth, and she couldn't find rest for her feet. For the soles of her, she couldn't find anywhere to land. So she had to come back to her security, to the ark. She had to come back to her refuge, which Noah brought her in. He reached out his hand and brought her back into her refuge. And it made me think about that. I read that and I thought, it's so true. Sometimes we venture off from our refuge, our security, and then we have nowhere to stop. We don't feel at ease anywhere. So we go back. And a lot of times it's because it's not time. So then we see that he sent her out the second time. And this time she came back with an olive leaf, which is a sign of peace, which is a sign of, it's okay. It's peaceful. But yet Noah was like, well, still a little uneasy about this. So let's think about it for a minute. So he waited another 7 days and he sent it out again. And this time she didn't return, which to me felt like a sign of completion, a sign of confirming that it is time. So when I read this, like I said, it made me think of different things in my life. And like I said, it's New Year, so we're going to kind of look at our last year. And it made me think of a lot of things the last year and the last few months. And I got to thinking, sometimes we venture off from our security and we just ain't got nowhere. Like I said, we have nowhere to go. We have nowhere that feels comfortable to us, so we come back home. Then we leave again, and we find peace because we find an olive leaf, but still there's something uneasy about it, so we go back home. And then we send out again, and we realize that it is dried up. Abatement means that the waters were reduced. And so I really thought about this, and I thought, well, what is God really trying to say? I know the story of Noah, he destroyed the earth and all that. But I really got to thinking, and I read on, and in verse 15 through 19, I'm going to just read it real quickly. Starting with 15, it says, And God spoke unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And then he speaks of all the animals, taking them out. And I'm going to jump to 19, and it says, Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. So when I read this and I got to thinking about it, I thought he found all this stuff, but God finally spoke to him and said, okay, Noah, it's time. You need to leave your refuge. You need to leave your comfort zone and go start anew. And so like I said, I looked at this and I thought, okay, the first time, it's not time. Second time, we have clarity. The third time, God speaks to us. He says, hey, it's time to get out. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to leave refuge, to leave safety. Right. It is so hard because we don't know what's going to happen. And I know God's speaking to me through this message more than probably anybody in this room. But I got to really thinking, I thought, my God, sometimes it takes God to speak to us. He shows us things and He gives us deals. He gives us a sign of peace. He gives us, the waters have stopped, they're dried up, just step on out. But we're like, oh no, not yet, God. It's not time. But then sometimes He takes us to God to speak to us. And, like I said, it makes me think of the new year, because it is a new year and we want new things and we want new blessings and But sometimes we have to listen to God and see where we want to go. And so I read this a little bit farther and I thought, okay, God, you sent the raven out, sent the dove out, you spoke to us, tell us to get out of the ark, it's time. So when we made me really think, I thought, okay, what happened next? And this is what really touched my soul. If we look at verse 20 through 22, it says, And Noah built an altar unto the Lord. And he took every clean beast and every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings unto the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, summer and winter, and the day and the night shall not cease. And when I read that, I thought, I don't know if God had a plan already that he wasn't going to curse us ever again, or if it was because Noah's first thing that he did was build an altar, made a sacrifice. So what is it? What do we do when we do leave our refuge? What is the first thing we're supposed to do when we leave? We're supposed to build an altar. And I I got to thinking about this, and a burnt offering is the highest sacrifice. It's a big barbecue party thing. We got the best of the best. But what I really thought about was when he said that God smelled a sweet Savior, which is agreeable. He was agreeable with what Noah did. And sometimes, and like I said, this is what I really think God was speaking to me about. Sometimes we leave our refuge. We say, okay, God, you spoke to me, it's time to go. But then we forget. We got to build an altar. Yes. And we got to offer up whatever we're doing in sacrifice. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we get so wrapped up on taking that first step of faith or doing this that we forget that we have to stop and build an altar. We have to offer something up to God. And so I got to thinking about that, and I really, really thought, okay, God, what are we doing next? What's going on here? And then, like I said, I know we see from Noah's Ark, we see many stories, and like I said, there's children's stories, TV movies. They even had just one recently. What was it? Russell Crowe played in it or whatever. So, which was a pretty good little movie, but it really made me think about, okay, God, what is this story to me? What has this got to do with my new year? With my what are you trying to tell me here? And so what I saw, and I saw the raven as protection. Like I think of like he protected, say Francis, and he protected the body, and he from getting devoured. He does that for him. And I really believe that's what the raven was supposed to do. Flew around to and fro to make sure there was nothing was going to attack them when they got out of the refuge. And then I see the dove. And the dove is many, I'm trying to think of the word, but there's many things that a dove stands for, resembles or symbols of a dove. And we have a Spirit of God, because we know that when Jesus was baptized, Spirit, that it's descended as a dove. We have the care, love, grace, sacrifice. And we can go on and on about what the symbolization of a dove is. But so what it made me think of is when he sent the dove out the first time, he sent it out to see if the water was abated, if it was reduced, what does it look like out there? So it made me really think about, okay, if we're in refuge and we this parent thing is about to grab me. But if we see, and he sends the dove out in the Spirit of God, and he takes us, and then we have the raven flying around making sure we're all okay. So when we leave, then the Spirit of the Lord kind of leads us, and he says, okay, like I said, the water's not all the way down. It's reduced. It's a little bit, but there's nowhere to rest our feet. There's nowhere to rest our soul. We're just still tired from the storm and the water waving back and forth on the ark, and we're still. And so he says, okay, it's not time. Come on back. So God brings out his hand. We land on his hand, and he brings us back into our refuge from the storm. Then he sends us out again, and we see that the water has reduced, and there's trees, so we were able to get an olive leaf, like I said, which is also a symbol of peace. So we have our protection, we have our peace. Now comes our confirmation. We send him out, he sends us out again. It's not time not to return. He's telling us not to come back to the ark. And I really thought about that, and it made me really, really just like, well, God, what is that? What is this? Not come back? We can't come back to our safety. We can't come back. This is when we rode the storm out. We did all this in the ark. And then God spoke to Noah. It's time to get out, buddy. There's a whole different world out there I have for you. And so, like I said, we have the protection is there. Once we see that he is protecting us, we have the confirmation, And it's time to begin again. Just like the New Year. Just like I said, we throw this in because it's New Year's. But I also thought to myself, he built an altar. And he sacrificed. And like I said earlier, I think a lot of times we forget. We forget to build the altar, and we forget to sacrifice. Because sacrifice is actually not just, it's to surrender. It's to fortify. It's to give up. It's to give yourself. It's to do something other than selfless act. It's something. And I really thought about that, and I kept going on and on in my heart, and I was like, okay, God, what do we do? And it made me think of, and I read on, and I got to Genesis 9 and 12 through 16, and I'm going to kind of briefly read through this, and it says, and God said, this is a token of the covenant which I make between you, me and you, every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And that really touched me. I got to thinking about that, and I thought, oh, I see. He didn't say that it wasn't going to rain again. He didn't say that you're not going to get wet. But what he said is that you're going to, when you get that cloud, there's going to be a rainbow in there. And when you see that, then you're going to know that that's between me and you. That's an everlasting covenant. When we leave the ark to start anew, it's scary. Just like I said, it's terrifying. We don't know what to do. You know, when you start a new job, when you go back to school, when you do things, it's terrifying sometimes. Sometimes we have no idea what is that first step. And so, like Noah, we just keep sending out the dove, hoping that something, and then finally God's got to speak to us and say, okay, get out. But then we got to stop, like I said, we have to stop and we have to make an altar, and we have to offer it back to God. We have to say, okay, God, this is our new beginning, just like this new year. This is our new year. Don't worry about what happened. Don't think about all the knots in the 40 knots in the ark. You were protected. You were secured, but it was time to step out. And that's what I believe God's telling me and telling all of us, is it's time to step forward. And then I want to take it a little bit farther than that. The covenant is everlasting. But then again, years later, we were all messed up again. So he had to bring somebody else. And we had one more everlasting covenant that he gave us, and it was the cross.
Amen.
And I believe that that's what God's telling me, is that the cross, it all begins with the cross. Because that was our everlasting covenant. And when we share that, you know, we hear all the time, and I've said this thousands of times, when we hear people talk about how we're supposed to love our neighbor, and we love this, and we love that, which we are. But our love is to lead them to the cross.
Yes.
Because we pray that none perish and go to hell, but go to heaven. So I would not want to harm anyone because of my faith, because I know if I harm them and they die not knowing God, then they're not going to the blessed place. They don't have that covenant. And I think that's what this is all about. Is stop, build an altar, sacrifice. And then we can have our new covenant. We have our everlasting covenant. We see the rainbow in the storm. And like I said, I'm going to close with that. I want to close with one more thing. And I run across a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. And it says, take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. And I believe that's true. Is we have to listen to God, take that first step out of the ark, even though it is our refuge, even though it was our comfort, and say, okay, God, the land's dry, and we're going to go do our work.
Right.
And that's all I have, and I just pray that